Hello, and welcome to wip.25, a podcast about design with a focus on a single project. We strive to go beyond the surface and understand the reasoning behind the designer's decisions. This podcast was created within the Masters in Communication Design at the SAD by the class of 2024/25. Enjoy listening. So I'm interviewing a studio that is Macedo Cannatà, and they just recently made a book about Manuel Oliveira, and I have a couple of questions about this particular books and book design making in general. So yes, hi guys. So the first question is, how do you organize working in a book, in a project on a book, in all? How to decide who is doing the layout, how do you work with the materials? And so because the working with a book is a big thing, and usually more than one person is doing it.
Hi Daria, thanks for being here and for choosing this project. It's the first time we are speaking about it actually, publicly or to someone else outside the studio. About your question, do you want to say something?
I would say that this book is like any other project in the studio. We are a small team, so we share the project with everyone, and we start digesting information. We start thinking about the project through any lens that we can possibly see, and any opinion that might come within this initial stage is given its space. But naturally we believe that projects should come from the content itself. So that's it. Through analyzing everything, we start building ideas. Obviously this is a catalogue raisonné, so a complete, it's an attempt to collect the complete work surrounding the film work of Manuel de Oliveira.
Yeah, who is the longest living filmmaker in the history of cinema, isn't it? So it has an amazingly long
and he is a director from the city with an enormous importance not only in cinema but also in Portugal. So for us it was a big responsibility to go through this work, but also a book that being a catalogue raisonné that had this need to be a very heavy book in terms of the seriousness that it deals with the work, so it should be timeless and deal with content in that way. But also maybe I'm digressing. No, but I think it's the initial. I think it's the initial assumptions of the work, and I think that kind of dictates. I think there are two contrasts, or two main things: the fact that it's this type of book that needs to be very serious, but also something that is done today and it should be inviting to people. So I think within these two, we start just building ideas.
Yes, and ideally, every project in the studio, we discuss the ideas collectively in the group. So this is the first stage of the project. Of course, because this was a very long project to make, it took many years. Several people worked on it in phases. So there's the beginning, there's the idea and the development of the graphic project, and then there's the typesetting. So setting all the texts, all the images, and this was done by several people over the years actually. So
Yes.
many hands worked on this project. But not all the books are like this. Some books are very short and maybe one person does it from beginning to end. But the ideas part, normally it's collective.
Okay, thank you. And how did the idea of the book changed through all these years working with it? Did you after you decide how, in general, how the book works, how the book looks, did it changed a lot after that at the end?
Didn't change much. I would say there was only one change that we had to go through at a point where we had to reduce costs. So we had to replace or remove the dust cover. The book was supposed to have a dust cover, and which would have this image that now the book has, and inside it would be a textile with something more classic, just probably a flat collar. And reducing costs, we took out the dust jacket and we replaced the textile with paper, so it's just an art cover with paper
But that was also a point.
binding, and the image was transported from the dust jacket into the cover directly.
But there was also some point, because of costs, of printing costs, that we needed to change the type size. And at this point, a lot of pages were already done, and we had to change the layout. But even before that, there was a moment where we changed format. The book was a little bigger, but this time we worked with margins, so we had bigger margins, bigger white space around the text. And then a second change, like 1 or 2 years after, we needed to reduce the type size, so the text would fit in less pages. This was
but I would say those changes were not very significant. They took a lot of work, probably more work than the change that I mentioned. They took a lot of work, but they were not drastic, or they didn't change the idea. This change of the dust cover, I think it made the book lighter. So eventually I think it was a change for better. It made the book probably less resistant to time, because there's no textile, there's no dust cover. But it made it lighter in terms of the way it looks. It looks a bit fresher.
More accessible.
But probably all the books, within 20 years, they will be very in bad shape.
Well,
That's it.
we'll see. Is there something, you look now in the final book, and is there something that you thinking that you would like to change or add or maybe extract from the book as the final, or do you think it's like the best it could be?
Without increasing costs?
Well, not drastically.
We had an initial proposal was to do a box, a cardboard box. I would still have it. I think that's the only thing, but obviously that was too expensive.
And for the opposite question, what is your maybe favorite thing in the book? Maybe some details that you like or how it turned out?
I think the thing I like the most is the navigation system. If you see the book on the side, there is like this little stair of white squares that is actually an infographic. Oops. This paper is really So, as I was saying, I think my favorite characteristic of the book is the navigation system. We needed to find a way that the reader, it's more than 800 pages and a lot of films, a lot of content. It's a very dense book with a lot of text, especially. So we needed to find a way that the reader could go through the content easily, and this could also be a specific, an interesting graphic thing to add to the book. So we decided on to have this kind of infographic on the border of the pages. So you see from the beginning of the Manuel Oliveira work, it actually starts black and white, and then all the way through the end of his work, you see the intensity of his production. So in the beginning, he would do a film here, a film there. He would spend many years without working.
You can actually see the period of the Portuguese regime where it just didn't work. And then obviously after the 80s, a lot of work.
And in the end,
with years, with more than one film.
For each film, you have two images. So there's a small image, and then a big spread image. Why did you decide to do that? What was the idea?
So as Maria João said, it's a book with a lot of text. And the main focus of the book is to bring together all the critical work, all the essays, all the notes, everything in terms of text that supports. So it was not a recollection of the movies in terms of the visual output. But still it looked important for us to include some kind of visual element for each movie. So the idea... so we had at least one frame for each movie, and we chose to have a second one increased, not only to bring this scale, the movie scale to the book, but also this would allow us to paint the margin of the page and work with this idea of a graphic. So
actually the small image allows for two things. It's the first. It's like a separator of the film, and you can see on the left the image together with the title on the right-hand page. So this is the introduction of the film. It's very simple, and also you can see the format in which the film was shot. So you see that in the first films the format is more square. It's from the 3:4 proportion, old pellicule movies, and then in the end it's digital 16:9, and this is a way to keep the actual proportions, the actual work of the director uncut. This was actually something that we discussed a lot with Cinemateca, with the Museum of Cinema, one of the publishers, because they were very worried about cropping the image of the big master, and we could crop it to fit the double spread and leave this little margin of image on the bigger images, only because at some point we had the entire image. So this was also a way to negotiate this idea of cropping. Yes.
And also when the Cinemateca came to you and the publisher came to you, were there any things that they asked to at the start of the project? They asked you to do like the specific requests, something, for example, like not cropping the images, or what else? Did they ask you to do? Or I
think the only, in terms of idea for the book, they didn't want a dusty book. Being the book that it is, they wanted to avoid something looking very old school, very dusty.
And they also used the expression they didn't want this book to become a tomb, you know, a dying tomb of the director. He had died only a few years before, and normally this catalogue raisonné, they are, you know, because they are
Leather
the final
with
work.
gold,
They're
letters.
very heavy, serious, boring, even, and they didn't want that. They wanted to have humor, lightness, you know, to make justice also to the persona and to the work.
Yeah. And then obviously there were demands, but just in terms of like content, what text comes before, the institutional things that they usually do, because this is done within Serralvo's institution, which does a lot of books and they have a way of doing it, so there are certain demands that they want, but those are normal things that that are included on any book. So
Also, because the works were done in different times, and there's a big amount of work. All the images, I can assume that they came in different states, because like some films are scanned, some not, some has just some have just maybe printed visuals or something, and the quality of images is different as well, because they have different ways of shooting film. And did you have to work in terms of color correction, or did you decide and do it some like even them, or did you decide to put them as they are? Like, what was the approach was working with images?
Well, most images, since they are from cinema, stills from movies, obviously there are many aspects that might be considered as low quality, but those were kept as they are because they just revealed the origins of the movie. However, what happens with most of these images is that they need to be lightened up. They need more light, because since they are made for cinema, which is light being projected, it's the subtractive color. So you can see a lot of detail in blacks. When you go to print, which is additive process of color, what happens is that you lose a lot of the information in the blacks. So most of the images need to be lightened up in the blacks to be able to be at least decently printed, or not to lose so much information in the black regions.
Also because the paper is absorbing the ink,
Yeah.
and actually Manuel de Oliveira movies have a lot of interior scenes.
Yeah, with low light.
It's a very dark cinema in general, and this had to be a little compensated, but the printer did this preparation.
Most of it.
Most of it. We did
Yeah.
it also. I don't remember.
The book is quite big, and it has a very specific physical appearance. Did you make some dummies before you do it? How do you work with the book that you will print afterwards? How do you understand their physical, how it looks?
Usually we do book dummies in-house. We print them, we train them.
Even sew them, or
Yeah, we try to do them as good as possible, and then usually we try to do a real dummy with the printer once everything is defined in terms of materials. We do a dummy with all the final materials to eventually correct something that might be like maybe the paper is not the best, maybe the book is too thick, and we need to solve something. In this case, I would say after the book dummy, not much correction was needed. There was an issue with the spine, which was curved, and or
Yeah.
it was flat. It should have been curved, and then they did it curved.
yes.
So usually it's also good to just to detect things that the printer might have missed, and when they do the dummy, we get the chance to correct them before they actually enter production.
Yeah, but actually in this particular book we did mock-ups, like photographic mock-ups of also to explain the client this idea of the borders of the pages and everything. So we worked a lot with digital dummies. I mean digital mock-ups that serve a bit as dummies, and the actual physical dummy was just in the end.
Usually the layout, like the grids and everything is very, very different in like from one designer to the other. Do you, because sometimes people have like very specific and very precise and detailed grid and everything. For some people just like 2 lines is enough. What is your like work with the grid in general, or is it? Do you have specific work styles with it, or is it like in different books you have different approaches?
Yes, that's it. It really depends on the book. Some books really need, very, intricate baselines or whatever. In this case, it's quite a simple layout. Most of the book has a 2-column layout with bigger margins, because we have the titles of the films in the margins, and then there are the sections in the beginning and the end of the book for the introductory text, which is a thinner column and just 1 column. But there's the grid is not very complex in this sense.
But also, I would say that usually, and me very personally, I prefer to start without any grid.
Yes.
And I think it's a common thing with Maria João, that the grid should come on top of something, not the other way around. Because usually when you start with a grid and then you start placing content, what happens is you kind of get stuck. If somehow the content doesn't fit, you need to change the grid, but you will be a bit reluctant because it took you so long, and you get emotionally attached to a grid, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the grid becomes your prison.
Yeah, so it's much better to start without a grid and work as much as possible with the book and make changes very, very freely and work optically and with some sense of composition. And then obviously you need a grid just as a tool to guide yourself through the book. Yeah. And to make sure that things
to operate,
are clear.
it's like an operational device, just to make it easier when you are typesetting. If the book is very short with little pages, maybe you don't even need a grid. And some books are so expressive that they shouldn't have a grid because of.
But obviously, sometimes, and it happened, the grid is the content. The grid is the book, and you want to actually. Start with a grid and impose the content on the grid, but that's, I would say, a very, very specific case.
Yes, but because we are also talking today to students, this is something that we see often in younger designers that come to our team or that we work with. It's this necessity to have a grid. It's like they want to show their ability to design a grid, and they start from that, and this is a terrible mistake.
Yeah, then the grid starts to talk more loudly than the content itself.
And this really, they are stuck and they cannot. So as an advice, leave the grid behind a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, and. You do not only books but identities and a lot of other design stuff. But what is did the percentage of book changed through times? How comparing to everything else? And do you try to how do you try to combine it with other works and
We do a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. You are asking the percentage of.
Well, I mean, sometimes some designers are doing only books and try to do only books, and sometimes they do branding, for example, or sometimes people try to mingle it around and do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or it just maybe through time the percentage of the book design evolved. So I just want to understand how did your working with books changed?
I would say we always have books being designed. We always have books in the process. Sometimes they occupy more space within the daily work. And obviously a book, it's always something that's done in stages. So we're not always working on a book. Sometimes it goes back to the client for revision. Sometimes we need to wait. Sometimes it's under production. I don't know, at the moment, how many books do we have going? Let's count them. Escolas municipais são 4, right?
Some of them are stopped or completely stopped.
And that's it. They
Maybe
follow.
8. I don't know. We do. I think we do. We do 6 to 10. We complete 6 to 10 books a year normally, isn't it?
More or less. Maybe less.
Maybe less. I don't know. It depends.
Between 5, 10. At the moment, I would say we have around 8 books, but I don't know, a few of them have been stopped like for 1 year because we're waiting just for some kind of content.
But also there's the more political answer, which is it's very I would say it's impossible for a studio in Portugal to survive with making only books, because books in Portugal are very badly paid. This kind of work, it's very demanding, it's very time consuming, but normally it's books are not printed, are not edited in Portugal to make money. It's not a lucrative production. Also for the publishers and for the institutions, so it's like how do you say, custo perdido? It's a lost investment normally. I don't know. This book costs X, and it's sold cost in production, and normally it's sold by the production cost. This is normal. Otherwise, people will not be able to buy it. So all the work behind it, the translations, the writers, the designers, this is all extra costs that evaporate in the air, and normally it's possible because there's some sort of patron or support or
institutions that are publicly funded. So that being said, we work with many other things, and I would say it's just a matter of we adjust day by day what needs to be done, and obviously books have a larger production time, so I would say it's not very complex to adjust. We are a team, so we can easily adjust the needs, and obviously.
But in a way, I would say that our work, you can see that there's a very strong editorial base in the work we do. Because even when we do identities, we are always looking for some sort of narrative in the ideas, in the way we will approach the work. So it's very bookish in that sense. And editorial work, I mean, even if we do websites or other sorts of editorial, like brochures, other things, there's this editorial way of approaching projects. Yeah. Books are just a part of it, and we love making books.
I think maybe it will be the final question. Well, for me, when I see something that I've done, I have this complex feeling of it's very exciting, especially if it's a physical thing. But then again, I can't look at it, and I can only distance myself and look at it, and when time has passed a little bit. What are your feelings when the thing is done and you look at what happened?
I think that's a very personal question. I think it depends on the person. For me, I prefer to be thinking about the next project. So supposedly when I see a project, there should be no surprise. I should know what to expect. So I shouldn't be very excited, or at least I should be satisfied, but I should know how it's going to be. There should be no surprise. I think Maria João likes to digest a little bit more the outputs.
I was thinking about this in the beginning when I started working. I would be very sad, and it would be very difficult for me if I would see some error in a book or in a project. I would have real trouble to digest this. I mean, as a perfectionist. And if I would get a book from the printer, I would sit down for 2 hours looking at it, because I wanted to be the first to see the mistakes, and not the client, not the audience. I would want it to be the first and to have the answer ready when the critics come, But, with age, I think I start to look at these little faults and mistakes as good things, actually. And this is something that we, even in a team with the younger designers of the team, we talk a lot. It's like a book is like a person, and then you can even start seeing the mistakes as beautiful things. It's part of their story. As a person, as you start to appreciate the little idiosyncrasies and the little problems and faults the person has,
Yeah, I have a feeling sometimes that it's just like a kid. You have to let go and let it live by itself.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The imperfections are interesting parts of books, of projects, of persons, indeed.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was great. Half an hour or how many minutes? Well, thank you once again.
Good luck with everything.
Thank you.